right, friends, welcome to another episode of Healedish, and today is a big episode because I have my husband here, Brandon. So thank you so much, Brandon, for agreeing to come on my podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's so kind of you. Well, thanks. It's fun. I'm excited.
I know, I'm so excited. I had posted on my story, and what did I do? I post a question box, and somebody asked if I would ever have Brandon on the podcast. So I ended up doing a poll, and over 500 people said that they want to hear from you. So you're very popular.
Wow, that's good to hear. That's pretty cool.
I guess I hadn't really thought about it either. You're like not very much in my videos either. So I feel like this will be a good way for people to get to know you.
Yeah, I feel like they hear a lot about me, but they don't actually see me first person. Next to never.
Yeah, all they ever hear about you is that you don't have religious trauma. So it's a miracle. It's somehow you made it out alive. But okay, I was hoping, well, here's what we're actually thinking about doing for this episode. We are going to do Brandon's story / our story and kind of how we worked through purity culture. And then you guys also had a bunch of questions for Brandon, and then there's also been questions that I've been wanting to answer for a while because people have asked for a Q&A episode for Healedish. So basically, first half is going to be a normal Healedish episode, and then we're going to get into a Q&A and get into a lot of different topics. So are you ready?
Sure. Let's take it. Let's dive in.
All right. Well, I was hoping you could get us started and tell us just a little bit about your childhood and what it was like being raised in your family.
It was actually rather very nice childhood. I come from the second largest state in the Union, Texas. So I'm being very specific there. Grew up, had two parents, and then a little brother who's 3 years younger than me. His name's Nathan. We grew up, I went to school in the big city where we live at, just on the south side. Went to school there from first grade to the middle of high school. Then my last 2 years ended up going to school in a little town, maybe about a half hour outside of the city. So it was a bit of a different vibe there, but it was good. I was a band nerd. I played trumpet. Let's see, that's where I spent most of my time growing up. I had a huge love of music, John Williams, and later Metallica, Nirvana, and the Beatles and stuff, which carried over into us later. Ended up graduating in 2015. But yeah, I was born 1996, October 3rd, in case anyone wanted to know.
Yeah, he's 2 years younger than me.
Yeah, I'm a Libra all the way. And then, ended up going to college. There, south side, then ended up going to a university afterwards, after I got my associates, and feeling good about that. And we met right at the end of that and started working in town after my first job at Chick-fil-A, which we actually shared that.
Oh my gosh, yes. So funny story, my first job was at Chick-fil-A and I was severely depressed. So it's really not that funny. I quit after probably 3 months.
Honey, that's so sad.
I know. I was going through it. I was breaking down crying at Chick-fil-A, and they said I wasn't sweeping very good. And ever since then, I hate sweeping. So when we divvy up our chores, I'm like, the sweeping is all you.
Nothing has changed.
No, I'm like, I apparently just am not good at it. But he worked at Chick-fil-A for, gosh, how many years? Like 4 years?
It's about 4 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then right at the end, I talked to someone who was in our drive-thru. They said they worked at a local credit union. I hadn't really thought about it. I applied, got hired, which was a good pay bump, which I was very happy about. And for that, I had to go to training in like their HQ, which was like really downtown. And because of that, my Bumble, I was on Bumble at the time because, I was single at the time, trying to meet people. And my Bumble ended up moving, where I was, my location. And you just happened to be looking maybe to meet someone, talk to someone too, just come back. And I moved inside your radius and we popped up on each other's, accounts and swipe right. And here we are.
I know.
All these years later.
The rest was history. Well, Brandon, you skipped through your entire childhood. Brandon's like, so that brings us to today. No, okay.
That's all you get to know.
When you were talking, I was like, we have to tell this story because it's so hilarious. Do you remember when you moved to, so we're Hispanic, right? And
Yes.
they ended up
those who don't know.
moving to this town that was super white. And he ended up going
Oh,
he ended up going to this school where a lot of his classmates were white. And do you want to tell everybody the insane racist thing that happened while you were there?
yes. Okay, so where we live, we're like in the middle between two small towns outside of our city. So when I was in kindergarten, that was before I started going to school with my mom, who she's a teacher. My dad was a speech therapist, but because she was a teacher, I could then go to whatever district she was working at, because even if I'm outside of the district because she taught there. And I was in kindergarten, but it was Thanksgiving, and or it was going to be. It was like the week before. We were doing arts and crafts and talking about the pilgrims and everything, and corn and turkeys, and we were dressing up as at the time. Did they say pilgrims? I don't remember if they said Indians or if they said Native Americans at the time. I wouldn't be surprised by either. But anyways, everyone in class was all Caucasian, all very white. I was the only little Hispanic child, and I spent a lot of time outside at that age, so I was decently dark. So my teacher, I believe, passed out. It was you either became a pilgrim or a Native American. You wore like a black hat with a buckle on it, or you wore like feathers and stuff. And so
This is so the 90s.
it was the 90s almost. It was 2001, I think. Yes, late 2001. But you're like, and I was made the only Native American.
Just
Yeah.
horrible.
Well, honestly, I loved it because everyone just like black construction paper. That's it. Yay. But I got to like get mine and get colors and, and draw on them and, markers and everything. I was having a great time. But
Brandon likes standing out, but oh my gosh, like your mom was like, what the heck?
Yeah, she'd say that like when she would pick me up from school, that sometimes there would be other parents that would like look at me funny in the hallway. I never saw it.
Brandon.
Excuse me. But she says so, and she just felt uncomfortable there. And plus, at the time, approaching religion. At the time, we were going to church there, a Catholic church in that city, in that town. But they just felt a little uncomfortable there. It just, the vibe was different. And so after that, they ended up moving to the other city the other town we were equally distant to. They enjoyed it there, and I ended up moving with my mom, going to school at her district until my last couple years of high school.
Well, do we want to get into a little bit of your Catholic upbringing? Because people always want to know if you have religious trauma, which somehow you miraculously made it out without any lingering bad feelings at all. So.
Yeah, no, I think most of the worst thing I could say about my religious experience growing up was that it was boring at times. I mean, it wasn't bad at all. I mean, I remember being in going to mass because I'm Catholic, or was Catholic at the time. Parents are very Catholic. Their parents were very Catholic. My whole family is Catholic. Let's see. I remember going to mass before we moved out of the city and went, to the rural town. Being kind of just boring, me sitting there. I think my mom would give me like books to read or paper and colors to draw on, crayons and stuff. And then when I got a little bit older, when we moved out to the slightly racist town, did the same thing. But by the time I was about 5 there, so I started to like listen a little more. But by the time they moved to like the church where they settled at and where I kind of grew up, really remember growing up in, I was about, 5, 6, I was listening, and it was, we kind of sang, and every week you have, the prayers that you preach, like the Nicene Creed and the Our Father. And in addition to all of that, growing up, we would always, God was, part of our life a little bit. I mean, we'd say our prayers every night before we go to bed. Let's see.
Which is very wholesome. I will get into it a little bit more later because there was a question where I was thinking I'll touch on this a bit. But when we first got together, I had so much religious trauma, obviously. And yeah, we'll get into it later, but I found it very sweet how simple your faith was and how, I don't know, just hearing your bedtime prayers. He used to pray for me before I went to bed. I would ask him if he would pray for me, and he had his prayer that they would say every single night. It was always the same. And it was very comforting to me at the time. It was very sweet, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to be, just from the heart and not for anybody else besides God or Jesus to hear, and very humble. And I have a memory of my grandma Papa. She's my maternal grandmother, telling me that she was talking to her brother, and he was asking her, "How do you pray? Gloria, how do you pray?" And she said, "Well, just talk like you're talking to your father, just with respect and, humbly and honestly." And I kind of remember that, and that kind of like approached it from that point on. Whenever you pray, you kind of be, kind of humble and, honest. And it was nice, growing up. I didn't really have anything wrong with it. I just took everyone's word for it. Went to CCD, church class after we went to the 9 o'clock mass, and then at 10:30, you had the CCD and you had the 10:30 mass, which was the mass that was all in Spanish. Then they had a 12 o'clock mass, which was like the more fun, going, jumping kind of music. And then one we never went to there, I went to like once. There was like a 7:30 mass, which is where like all like the little old people went, and it was all very, oh. Yeah, so, every mass had like a little bit of a different vibe for like whatever your personality was, when it came to religion. But no, things were chill. Everyone was nice, and the different energies were good. I would listen to the gospel and listen to our priest, give his sermon, after reading, and it was fine. My teacher that I had, there's one that I had, Mr. Hoshak was his name was. He was very kind. He had a real deep voice, and he'd sing and talk to us about different stories like Noah's Ark and let's see what else, like Samson, and all of these just stories from the Bible. Nothing really crazy, because after we met, later, you would tell me about what it was like growing up, and purity would like come up so often, and just stuff to do and not to do, and lessons. And I feel like it was less of that, and it was just more just hearing. I mean, there were sometimes morals to stories. I remember, what's her name? It was when Sodom and Gomorrah. That whole story. Yeah, I remember hearing that in church and saying, I think that was the one that got destroyed, right, by God in the Bible. And then a woman was leaving, and God said, "Don't, look back," or whatever. And then she looked back, and then smite or whatever.
She turns into a pillar of salt.
Yeah, I thought that was whoa. But that was like the craziest that I think ever got. Well, I guess the flood was also crazy, but it was just, ooh, it kind of had this like fantasy-ish tale kind of feel. It was never like, yes, they said this happened, but they also didn't hit home like the earth is 6,000 years old and this definitely happened and it's everything in the Bible is true. It was mostly about the moral of each story that was told and what Jesus said, and about being a good person, being faithful, to God, and, going to the 10 Commandments. Golden rule, I remember a lot, how treat others how you would like to be treated, something along those lines. And just basically just being good. I went to, here's a fun thing that happened. When I was in 8th grade, I think it was, went on an Acts retreat for the first time, which is very cool. An Acts retreat was basically, I was at not in my church that I went to, it was at my uncle's church. He was very involved in like their Catholic church. They lived maybe 20 minutes away. So I went over there, and it was probably 20 of us or something like that. We went to like a Girl Scouts camp. You had, cabins and bunks, and there's like a river and stuff there. We all go into this room, and a guy named Aaron. He was probably like 14 or 15, but he was a high schooler, so he seemed so much older. He came up to me. He's like, "Hey, come over. Here, come with us." And so we all kind of hung out. They looked after us and they prayed for us. There was like the older kids and the younger kids, and we just spent a weekend there, praying and singing songs, playing games. And I think that was one of the like highlights of my like religious upbringing. And then, yeah, I mean, in addition to that, I mean, I would help at my church later once I got into probably high school is when I started to like help out at the church. So the reason that I started out kind of helping there at the church was because I had aged out of classes. After I think it's 8th grade, you kind of grow out of youth group and stuff. I think there may have been some classes for some of the older ones, but it was mostly like every week you go and do this, you do it, up until this age. So it was partially helping out, there and being kind to the teachers and helping get copies and stuff. But also there was a girl there that I met. Her name was Tori. I met her in 8th grade. We had to they had some sort of festival or something there at the church in like the parish hall, and our whole thing was like our table was to bring salad, and we met and chatted, and I found out she was helping there. Maybe she may have even reached out and asked if I wanted to help out. And so I did, and it was good. It was a fun time, and we were friends for about a year or so. We would, help, and we eventually, that first Christmas after starting to help, this was early high school, ended up becoming Joseph. I dressed up and had the robes and everything for the Christmas.
I forgot about
production
this.
they have. Yeah. Oh, and I totally forgot. I had been in it before when I was young. I was probably like 8, and I was like a king. My mom got I think she like made a whole king costume for me. It was very cool. And then later did it again as Joseph, and I was like, woo! But things are good, and things are really high. I would, assist like that, and I would always go to mass before at 9:00, and then right after that go and assist. And would help with productions they had, or if they had any events, like there'd be sometime like once a year there's like a whole barbecue festival thing. They get vendors to come out and they're grilling and this whole thing that they just like to do for the community. And it was fun to be a part of that. Growing up, and that continued. The person that I ended up liking, Tori, we ended up dating after another year or so, and then I helped for another couple years, like through the end of high school, was involved and was actually, since a small town, they had parades for our local festival, and
And
was
he
involved
was
in that.
also
Yes.
a mariachi for a little bit.
Well, yeah. So yeah, I forgot about
Which
that.
was such a vibe.
There's
Yeah.
so many
He
things that I
plays
forget
a
about.
lot
But
of
yes.
instruments. So do you want to tell everybody how many instruments you play?
Oh, okay. Put me on the spot. Okay, well, guitar, of course, that's my main instrument. I have, a band, if nobody knew. I have a band, we're called Desert Sky. I play lead guitar and I sing and write most of the lyrics and most of the music. But I can also play drums and bass and piano and mellotron and
Trumpet.
trumpet, and yeah, trumpet. I can mess around with some of brass from going back to high school. You always kind of pick up a mellophone or pick up a euphonium, whatnot. Good times. And so yeah, I was because of the trumpet playing, I when I was in high school, my freshman year, I got involved in mariachi band. There was an elective; you could either be jazz or mariachi, and I chose mariachi because that would be fun. And the mariachi band was kind of like the school district's like band to send to places and like to events. So if there was something that we were going to like head campus, HQ, wherever, they have all the department meetings and stuff, and they have some sort of event, they're going to call us out and we're going to go and play. If the school district is representing themselves at some sort of function, for the public, they call us out and play. And so I like that. My grades suffered because of it, but it was fun. And so because of my musical side, in addition to all of this helping out teachers at the church, I also sang in the church band for a while. I was pretty consistently playing at our 9:00 mass, play guitar and sang, and that really kind of was my first step into like publicly performing. It was once I was junior, senior when I was proficient enough to start singing, and that went on into my playing later. So a lot of involvement there and no real issues, growing up. Like I said, it was all just about being very
Yeah.
pure and stuff.
Well, going back to some of the things that you were taught. So you were saying, in regards to turning into a pillar of salt or Noah's Ark or anything. So there was no fear inside of you, I suppose. Like, were you scared of hell or because in my upbringing, I very much was taught about the wrath of God. Obviously, one thing that's very interesting, though, too, is that I feel like I was taught more that Jesus is my friend and I have a closer relationship with Jesus. And it's kind of we're buddy buddy and you view him. This is more so Bethel, but like daddy God, people would say stuff like that. And one thing that was different with you is I feel like you said it's more so a respect thing and like you speak to God very respectfully and humbly and it's a little bit more formal than I think my upbringing was.
I think in my head, I kind of view Jesus as like the father type. I know that he is like the son, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. But I kind of viewed him as, oh, father, especially being young. And he was not terribly different in age from my dad, because how old was he when he died? 32-ish?
33. Don't quote us,
33?
guys.
Something like that. Early, mid-30s. And at that point, my dad was probably in his, mid-30s, when I really remember that. So I kind of like, okay, Jesus is about kind of like father vibes and God was like grandfatherly. Like you would pray to God, but you'd also kind of pray to Jesus as a little bit like as the intermediary-ish.
And you would pray to Mary, which I
That's
was
true.
told, okay, growing up, I feel so bad because I was told that Catholics were going to heaven. So it wasn't a salvation issue, but I definitely thought you guys were wrong and you were going to get in some trouble with God for praying to Mary because they made it sound like they worship Mary.
hmm
And I had never really known any Catholics because I was so in my non-denominational evangelical circle. So, do you want to explain kind of how they phrased it to you, what it meant to pray to Mary?
So it I know depending who you are and where you come from and the different parts of Catholicism that you believe, you may feel differently. But with growing up for me, it was kind of like you pray to Mary, you kind of treat her as your mother, just like Jesus, as the mother. Say if say if I got in trouble or something, if I did something wrong at home, and I have my parents. If I was worried about telling Dad I broke the vase, and he said, you would say something, Mom, can you talk to Dad about me and put in a good word for me about breaking the vase or something. I'll say I'm sorry, but just try to maybe talk to him first. And so that was kind of like the vibe. You kind of appeal to your mother to, on your behalf, speak to your father, who was God. But I do know, I just thought about it right now, speaking to your kind of like worship of Mary thing that you heard growing up, I'd say I kind of came across this more once I had already got involved with the Catholic Church and was helping out. And, like I said, I was in the Christmas production. I was also Juan Diego in that whole story with La Virgen de Guadalupe. It's about Juan Diego. I can't remember the whole story. So he ends up meeting La Virgen, like the Virgin Mary. But she kind of looks a bit different. She kind of has a little bit more of like a Mexican kind of design about her aura, what she wore and stuff was a little bit more traditional there. She said, if you take these roses and go down to the city and tell them you saw me, it's something along those lines. So the whole thing is I'm carrying roses during the production. And then at the end I say, oh, I met, La Virgen. And I put my robe down and then an image of the Virgin is on my chest, and the roses fall. And they, from what I understand, the Mexicanos, a lot of Latin American countries, they kind of view, La Virgen as some, more of a standalone, I don't know, someone to look up to and pray to. Yes, she's still the Virgin Mary and every role, but there's a little bit of like a little more focus put on that, kind of leading me to believe maybe that's where some of that kind of thinking comes from. And there's Catholicism all around the world, and everywhere you go, all the customs are all going to be a little bit different. But the way it was always described to me, the Roman Catholics were kind of like the oldest straight line back to Jesus. Now, I can't say whether that is true, but that's just what I kind of heard growing up. There were all these sects that broke off, Lutheranism and Methodism and all that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that's terribly wrong, but it's not necessarily my experience when I was going to church.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about the purity culture or lack there of purity culture, because I think what was shocking to me was when we first got together, you made it sound like you were just taught to be a good person. That is
Mhm.
pretty much like what your faith was like, just be a good person, do your best, and you're good. And I think a lot of us who have religious trauma, we were told if you sin and if you don't apologize right after, like you're going to go to hell and all of that. So did you guys get talks about purity? Hardly at all.
No, and any sort of like sex talk that I had was like separate. Like we had that in school. I remember my dad giving me the birds and the bees talk right before middle school, because that's where actually maybe I think it was right before middle school, because that's where like things change. Because when you're in elementary school, you're like a kid, but then once you go to middle school, then you're like in school with like 8th graders who are 14 and they're like dating. No, like it's like early dates, but people are like holding hands and having their first kisses and stuff like that. And some, people would be experimenting. And so it'd be important to learn about that. But it was never really connected to Christianity and purity, not having sex. It was just about, being safe and
So
not necessarily
crazy.
being safe, but just to not have sex because you're young. Wait until you're married, because it's better then. You can love the person and stuff. Because that's kind of stuff that I heard in 8th grade. I specifically remember that.
But not
In
at church.
it really wasn't talked about too much. Like, I mean, maybe
Blows my
something was
mind.
mentioned at some point, but it was never like if there was something, I don't remember, but let's say there was like one day, and it was just about keeping waiting or something. But I can't tell you that happened because I don't remember. I would just, if there was, I'd say maybe it was one day a year, and maybe we just missed it that day. But I did not. That wasn't a thing. We weren't really taught that. I mean, it was more about just being respectful. Like there was one time you just reminded me. Once Tori and I were dating, we were making copies in like the copy room, and then we like stepped close to each other, and then our like our boss walked in. We didn't do anything. We didn't kiss or anything. I think she was like really. My girlfriend was like really like stressed about something. I think I put my arm on her shoulder because like a lot was going on in her life, and she was just telling me, venting, and she's like, "Oh," like later she talked to us about being, I don't know, respectful, or I don't know. She kind of danced around it and didn't really like accuse us or whatnot. It was just kind of like, okay, let's keep it together. I know y'all are together. I love y'all together. Y'all are so cute. I support you, but
Don't put your arm
let's
around
cool it. Yeah, I mean, just in case, and we're teenagers. Teenagers are crazy. Teenagers are stupid. They will do stupid things.
Yeah, we're not going to get Brandon. We're not going to get into it. Okay, but Brandon, I have to like tell him in advance because he's such an open book. He would say things, but I'm like, we probably shouldn't. No, but yeah, Brand had some crazy stories. He was not the purest of them all in high school.
Good times.
Got in trouble a few times. Okay, so what was I going to say? Oh, did you ever go to confession? Because that's something that obviously I never did, but I feel like you have told me that you only went once or something like that.
The first time that I needed to, what was it? I don't think, was it communion or was it confirmation? Maybe it was confirmation. I can't remember. It was one of those. See, I got, baptized, and then communion later when I was allowed to have the blood of Christ, and then confirmation later when I finished. I never really understood what confirmation was, but it was. And I remember the seven. There are seven sacraments. I don't know what they are. I remember the Stations of the Cross, but yeah, one of those times I went and there was like a prayer. I said it was something like, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." Something. It's been so many days since I last confessed, and tell him what I did. And this is interesting. I remember that when I was in there, I didn't know. I couldn't think of one thing that I had done wrong because I was like a good kid growing up. Like
No, he was
honestly
the goody
was.
two shoes, and so was I. Like, I feel like one of the reasons why we're so compatible is our family structures are pretty similar, and both of our parents have been in education. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. Your mom was a third grade teacher. So I just feel like we were both good noodles for the most
Yeah.
part.
Yeah, I said, Father, I can't think of anything, but I may have at some point. But I'm not just saying that. I really can't think of anything. He's like,
No, I
okay.
love
He's like,
that because so often I've gotten comments from people and they were like, I was told that I needed to go to confession and I really could not think of like, how was I sinning at that young of an age? Like, I really couldn't think of anything that I had
no,
done bad. So maybe your sin is that you're arrogant or something. I don't know. Maybe you're.
God. Yeah, no, it wasn't that complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, this for me. I mean, because what? You go to school, do your homework, eat food, don't talk back, go to bed at your bedtime, wake up, do it all over, and play in the middle. Life wasn't that complicated. There weren't that many things to like get in trouble with. And at that time, I really wasn't. Oh yeah, that was one thing. My mom was very like overly protective. So I really wasn't able that often to like go out with friends from school. And plus, since I didn't live in the district of, that I was like going to school in, I didn't live near anybody that I went to school with. I had like one friend. His name was AJ, and we hung out. We were like, he was like my best friend throughout middle school and early high school. And with him, we'd like pick him up and he'd come over to the house and be like a half-hour drive. But for the most part, no. So kind of out of it. And so I didn't really have many opportunities to get into mischief. Just did what I needed to do. Yeah. And I think you mentioned earlier, I think I forgot about like hell and how I kind of felt about hell growing up. Growing up, I knew that like hell was bad. I knew that like bad people go to hell, like the idea.
You're like, but I'm a good person, so I'm good.
Yeah, like I knew that like killers went to hell, like, and people that weren't sorry. But I guess if you were sorry and you sought forgiveness and you like meant it, then okay, you're actually sorry. But no, I mean, like I felt like I was a good kid, a good person. My parents say, yeah, if you're bad, if you're like a terrible person, you go to hell, but you're a good person. You're not going to hell. And yeah, I didn't really worry about it. I never felt like I needed to worry about it. And
I love that for you.
Yeah, I didn't really play a part because I know in some people's lives it's in like for you told me that growing up you were worried if I do this or think that or whatever, question this, I'm going to go to hell and burn for all eternity. It wasn't that serious,
I know, and we'll get into it later, but I mean, at the beginning of our relationship, oh my gosh, I would cry and be like, I'm so afraid that I'm going to hell. And you would be like, what are you talking about? You're a good person. Why would you go to hell?
You're not going to hell.
It just shows like we had totally different upbringings on what would send you there. I thought that you were one mistake away, one forgetting to say you're sorry after each individual sin away from going to hell, whereas you're like, yeah, as long as you don't mass murder, like you're probably
yeah.
pretty good to go.
Yeah, I mean, what's so serious? Like what? I mean, if you took something you weren't supposed to, give it back.
Which is why I feel like this is why you don't have religious trauma is your church. I get a lot of comments from people who were raised Catholic and it was extremely traumatizing for them. So I think it really has to do with your specific church that was not a part of your upbringing at all. You didn't really have purity culture. You didn't have the wrath of God type of talks. It seems like it was more so care for people, care for your community, and respect God. And that's kind of it, or from what I have seen. Because I also have gone to your church as well. So
yeah, I think there's a couple three things that I think maybe could kind of communicate how I'm feeling about it. Like for one, I think maybe because it was like in a small town, like outside of a city, it wasn't viewed as like a battleground church or something. Everyone there is like old,
Yeah, it's a
or
tiny
they're
little
like a
place.
farmer, and they have their little farm kids with them, and just go to church. And so there wasn't anything that they had to like worry about, and and you just be a good person, and in the Spanish mass, it same thing. Just everyone was here. We all believe in God. Be a good person. So maybe that was part of it. No enemies, so therefore there's no reason to like hit on this. Another thing, the way I kind of view it, the way I kind of like interpret how I feel the differences between how we each viewed God, how you viewed God growing up, and myself. It's kind of like the Ten Commandments, the films, the Ten Commandments versus Prince of Egypt. Like my God was kind of like warm and loving and would talk and that kind of feeling. And then I got the feeling like from you, it was like a more vengeful God, wrathful God, powerful, smite the lightning and whatever. It just felt different,
Well, the thing
and
is, it you know, I think what's so confusing is that for me it was both. I feel like I had lower lows and higher highs than you,
mm,
whereas you were just vibing and chilling with no stress. And while I was afraid that God was going to smite me, send me to hell, like when I fooled around with this guy at Bethel, my car broke down and I started crying and I was like, God is punishing me because I'm a whore. Okay. So like I viewed God as he's ready to get me. Okay. But also
scary.
I I feel like I had this closeness with him as well where I would cry during worship. I'm on my knees. I feel
Hmm.
very connected to him. I'm looking at the sky. I'm having all of these experiences. I feel like he's talking to me all the time. So it wasn't just this vengeful idea of God. I feel like he's my best friend, the lover of my soul, as they would say, and then also he doesn't want to kill you, but
Hmm.
because of you, he might have to kill you. His hands are tied. So
Hmm.
it's like
Okay.
that was difficult. Whereas I feel like your experience was just a lot chiller, just like warm,
Yeah.
just normal
Yeah. For
warmth,
the most part, altogether, it's just very normal warmth and nothing to really worry about. And it just like there in my family, there was a place for religion. Like it, you would pray at night. You'd remember Jesus was the reason for Christmas. You'd go to mass on Easter. That was about it. Maybe you'd have prayer at Thanksgiving. I mean, every once in a while there'd be a conversation we had about Jesus or whatnot. But, my parents never pressed the whole like, this happened, this is fact, this is history and stuff. It was just, excuse me, sort of stories they told. And so, yeah. And so, also going back to what you said about higher highs and lower lows, um, I never really had those like high of highs as you did. I think the closest I ever got was at the end of the Acts retreat. They're saying, "Oh, you're going to be on fire for God," and and just being, happy and feeling faithful and singing songs and doing that for a weekend really kind of gets you into the mood. And just socialization, going out with all these other kids your age. That's what it's really about, But you kind of like connect it all together, and it was fun. It was genuinely fun. I'd say that was my high point. And I think having a life like that, like having a lot of positive experiences connected to religion like that, kind of gives me a little bit more of an insight as to what it must have been like for you, where that was like consistent. And so therefore
It was
it's
every
much
week
easier.
at youth
Yeah,
group.
it's like much easier to like get into that because this is just what it is, you know, week after week and just for years, this is what it's like. So I can understand why it's easier to like go deeper down that. You can have the lower lows because the highs are so high, and you just kind of take the good with the bad in that sense.
Keeps you there. It's a dysfunctional relationship, honestly, is kind of what it felt like. But do you want to get a little bit into just your family growing up in high school? Because I know, as your wife, some of the stuff that you went through during that time.
Hmm. Well, let's see. Growing up, it was good. It was great. Great parents loved me. I loved them. They loved each other. They loved my brother. I loved my brother. We were all happy. I think by the time I was in fourth grade, how old was I? About 10, something like that. My dad, he was in grad school at the time. He was like a semester away, less than a semester away, 6 hours or 3 hours away from getting his master's. Um, and he ended up having a mental break, like during finals or something. I think he was upset. One of his professors like didn't want to pass him, and then he like blamed the professor, and he just like kind of spun after that and went to a dark place. And he actually, I didn't know this till later, but one time I went to the front door and my dad was there, my mom was there, and someone else, maybe my grandpa, were there. My dad said he was going away to work for a few days. I'm like, oh, okay, it's never happened before, but I believed him. But I ended up finding out he went to mental hospital for a little bit. He was feeling suicidal and stuff. And after that, things were different. He kind of his he yeah, my dad's bipolar, and multiple a borderline personality disorder as well, and that kind of really started to present itself at that time. Asking my mom, after I had grown up, did you see any of this beforehand? She said, not really. Every once in a while there'd be a little something here or there, but it was always kind of just maybe his personality, a quirk. But after this incident, he like changed as a person in a lot of ways. He still loved us and still loved my mom, but he was much quicker to anger, and they'd start to fight more. This was happening through, the end of elementary school was rough. Through middle school, I would hear them, once in a while fighting, but they were always in their bedroom. He developed agoraphobia. He would say claustrophobia, but he meant like going out and being in claustrophobia in the sense of like being around a lot of people, just feeling closed in spaces. He'd say, and so he couldn't go out. There'd be a lot of graduation from a grade or having like a band concert, or later with Nathan when he got into theater for a bit, acting, going to his shows. He couldn't do it. He felt guilty. My mom would try to get him out there. You're going to wish you did. He's like, don't, think I know. And there's a lot of back and forth, not the best, I think, understanding there. And so there was a lot of tension. I remember being in 8th grade at one point, and my dad picking me up from CCD, my church class for the 8th graders. It was in the evening during the week. Pick me up, and we were driving home, and he told me that him and my mom were going to get a divorce, which totally caught me off guard. I thought, okay, sometimes some parents fight, but had no idea, was not expecting it. So cried a lot, and we ended up getting some ice cream and went home. I don't think my dad said why I was crying to my mom when I came in, and then nothing happened for like 2 years, just nothing.
Did
2.5
you ever
years.
ask him? Because he drops this bomb on you. Did you ever ask him again? Like, hey, you said you're getting divorced. Is that happening?
No, I was afraid to. I was afraid to bring it up and risk starting something again and risk them getting divorced.
Yeah, maybe I should just drop it and maybe it won't happen.
Yeah, because you don't want your parents to get divorced, and it feels like, oh shoot, there's this axe hanging over my head. I'm not going to poke it.
Yeah.
So it was chill in the sense of I didn't hear anything, and they would continue to fight and stuff. And, I remember one time where we had like a TV that was like older, had like the plastic front and then like the panel behind it. I remember one time waking up in the morning and like the plastic had been like broken and panel had been like from like a remote being thrown at one point, and it was like, ooh, luckily my dad was never at that point, wouldn't get upset at us too much. He wouldn't cuss at us or anything. I could just tell he had a shorter fuse. And so I think I kind of, without kind of realizing it, was a little more careful with him, a little more quiet. And that kind of, throughout all that time, my mom, my brother, and I got like really close. Just the three of us would go everywhere together. We'd go shopping, we'd go to school, we'd go to church, we'd go to movies, and whatever the heck, we were together, we were with her. So that kind of, made us three musketeers for a good while. By the time I was at the end, no, it was around Christmas time. It was like late December of my junior year. We ended up getting called to the living room. This is probably like 8 o'clock at night, 7 or 8. And he called my brother and I to sit down on the couch and we were listening. And he said that him and my mom were getting a divorce. I think he even said it was like his fault or something like that. I forgot the exact words he used, but he communicated that because of him, they're getting a divorce. And my mom walked in, oh, you shouldn't be telling them this and stuff. Kind of like maybe this is something we should just talk about first before just immediately in the middle of a fight, call us over and like, this is happening. It's done. So we ended up, I ended up going to my friend's house and who lived a few minutes away from my aunt, my dad's sister, and my mom went over because they were like this, because she was with him since high school and they've been together decades.
His parents got married they'd been together since they were very young.
Mm-hmm. My dad was a sophomore and she was a junior, something like that. Or was he a freshman? She was a junior, something along those lines. But he was like an athlete back in school. She was in color guard. And he was kind of, hot stuff. He was like a star player and he had a lot of confidence. And so he went up, I think you're cute. I want to talk to you and go out with you. And actually this is kind of important. He was her first and only boyfriend, the first person she ever dated. Her mom, my grandma, was very careful with her girls because she had my mom and my aunt. And she just wanted to be very careful with them. My aunt, she's older than my mom by like 3 years or so. She was out there. She had boyfriends and whatnot, would go dancing and go on dates. My mom was just didn't have time for that. She had maybe like a crush, but she never said anything. She'd do her schoolwork. She'd work hard on her color guard, and she was a good kid. Goody two shoes. Like me. That's where I get it from my mom. So because of that, she didn't really have a lot of experience dating anybody. And she found some guy and he was nice and stuff and ended up dating through high school. And then, through college, I think they broke up for a little bit, like his senior year and her first year of college. But then after that, they were together and they got married in 93. I was born in 96 and all the way through till that. So she didn't really have anyone else to talk to. She had her, her couple friends, but they were like family to her. They'd been around the Huertas for most of her life. And she was really close with my paternal grandparents. They took her on kind of like a daughter. She was always involved. I'd say more so than my maternal family. We would be with the Huerta side because her sister would be out. They live in a few hours away, 3 hours away, so we don't see them that often. And just my grandparents, they kind of keep to themselves. They don't really go out too much. So it was all together. So anyways, throughout the next year or so, they kind of were back and forth. He would be at home for a couple weeks, leave a couple weeks, which is a bit rough. Things would start to get worse. My mom would start to confide in me. Let's see. She would talk to friends. I was 17 at this point. She would talk to her best friend that she knew from high school. And she's like, he's old enough. He can understand some stuff now, or like what's going on. So she told me like how he would, act, being bipolar and and just how it was really rough for her. And I started to see it, and he would start to get, at this point, more angry with me. There was a moment where a memory that I remember being upstairs with him and talking with him and talking about, being a parent and a father. And I was saying just different things I wanted to do as a parent. And I wanted to, be good to my kids, loving, supportive, show up to everything. And he took offense to that because he couldn't be there. And I was like, I'm not trying to offend you. I know the reason that's the case. I understand you can't help it. But he was very upset and said something and got upset at me. He's like, oh yeah, some father or whatever trying to hurt me. And then he like said, F you, and walked out. Well, he actually cursed at me and walked out, flicked me off. My mom heard about that, and it was like a big deal because she stayed with him because she wanted to conserve a family unit. And she always wanted to shield us from that, just let her deal with that. But once it started coming to me, and then not too long after, my brother was so quiet. He was so innocent. He would keep to himself. He wouldn't want to get involved. I was more likely to say stuff. There's even a point where I like stood up to my dad to protect my mom because he like yelled at her in front of me. I'm like, no, you're not talking to my mother that way. And she got in the middle between us because she, doesn't want anything to happen. My brother, he was totally innocent. There was one time he got upset at him and cussed him out. And I don't know why, for no reason. I know Nathan didn't deserve it. It's just where he was. So he, that was kind of like the last straw. And plus the whole thing that kicked this whole off, besides just his behavior, it came out that he cheated, which was very rough for my family. And because of that, they tried for a good while, like I said, but both that and just his behavior, it was just, I told my mom, I love you, I love, daddy, I love my dad, but this isn't good for you. You need to leave him. It's important. And so she eventually did once she realized that it was worse for us to be together, for them to be together than apart. And it was rough after that for the next year trying to get the divorce to go through. But over the intervening 10 years, we've had our ups and downs, my dad and I. More recently, in the last few, things have gotten better. We've gotten to talk more. I understand, now I'm more of an adult. I can have a little more perspective on what things were like, on, the issues he was going through and how my mom didn't necessarily handle everything the best with being understanding. She would just know what would need to happen. I'm sure you're going to wish you could do this and that, but he can't. And, it wasn't the best communication, but they tried and it failed.
Yeah, but she definitely didn't deserve. Sorry, just have to say that. Definitely didn't deserve the treatment that she got, and
for sure, no.
I just have to say, Bran's mom is an absolute angel on this earth. She is one of the sweetest people ever. And I'm so thankful that we have her in our life. She's amazing.
She is pure. She is like the purest person you could ever imagine. She is so amazing. I love her so very much. The only other person that I can think of in this world that's like pure like her is you. Like
Stop.
Both of y'all are just like, I mean it. Like both of y'all are just like good, honest to God people, pure people. And y'all are both so amazing. And I'm so blessed to have y'all in my life.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's go ahead and get into our story then. I guess.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, I guess we should get into how we met and how you helped me heal from all of the stuff, right?
All of the things.
Yeah. Well, as Bran said, so if you guys have heard my episodes of Healedish, you know that I had left Ted after the Disney World Burger incident. I came back to San Antonio and boy, was I a mess, guys. I was so emotional and I don't even know what I don't know. I say I was a mess, but I was also very happy. Looking back on that time, I remember I did not cry one time over losing that relationship. I cried over being like, oh, this is sad. I'm going to be divorced, and like the stigma of that, feeling like nobody would ever want me. But I was so emotionally disconnected from him that I honestly didn't feel like I had anything to grieve at all, which I think is hard for people to understand. But I just wasn't emotionally connected to him. So yeah, it wasn't that hard for me to move on, I guess. But I had downloaded Bumble on a whim. I was kind of lonely. I downloaded it just to see who was out there because in my mind, I hadn't I don't know if I had ever been on a dating app before, and I just wanted to see what was out there. So here I am. I'm swiping through and I see Brandon and he's in a band. So there were some pictures of him singing on stage.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh. And when I tell you guys, and sorry, Brand, I hype you up way too much, but I saw him and I was like, he's totally my type. Like, literally, if I could put what I'm attracted to on a piece of paper, it's like Brandon. I'm just think he's the hottest person alive, right? So anyway, I was like, okay, I'm going to swipe on him, but I'm probably not going to meet anybody because that would be crazy. I should not actually meet up with anybody on here, but I think I saw on your profile that you liked long talks. So on there you said like, oh, we can just like have long conversations. That's like my favorite thing to do. And I thought, okay, well, even if nothing comes of this, if he's a good talker, we'll at least have a good time, because I like vulnerability and stuff. So swiped on you. We started talking about Alamo Draft House. And I wanted to say the first thing I thought when I saw you, and then you can say the first thing you thought because it's kind of crazy. So I saw him and I thought, this guy could break my heart. Was the first thing I thought.
Honey.
I know, which is sad, but
So
I mean, I was like,
sweet.
I would so fall in love with this guy.
You knew.
I knew, and I didn't feel that way about anybody that I had seen on there.
Really?
I did talk to a couple people, but when I saw you, I was like, oh my gosh, I would so fall in love with that guy and get my heart broken. And what did you think when you saw me?
Well, to be honest, when I first saw you, this is not like an exaggeration. I had been on, dating apps, Bumble primarily, for, I don't know, maybe, how old was I at the time? 23, right? Or going to be 23? Was I 22 at the time? Anyways,
he was 23.
I had been on from, okay, 23. So I had been on dating apps for 4 or 5 years at that point, and nothing really stuck. I had had another serious girlfriend after Tori, and then with her, we were kind of on and off for a while. We were in a band together, and I would date also in the middle, and nothing really stuck. But when I saw you in your profile, like immediately, I don't know what it was, but I really felt like she could be my wife. I don't know. I don't know why, but something about your profile and you I just felt it. I just knew it. I just knew it in that moment. And it sounds like something you'd say in like a romance movie. It's true. And you felt, like the same way. Oh, he could break my heart.
Up.
So I feel like that says something,
Mm-hmm.
Before it's like, oh, we got to know each other and she's such a nice person. He's such a nice guy. It's just, I think there's something to be said about, if not love at first sight, then, I don't know, acknowledgement at first sight. A knowing?
A knowing. Like, I don't know how I feel about like love at first sight, but yeah, I'll get into it a little bit later. But I feel like I knew very quickly, Yeah, so I kind of freaked out though. I realized, what the heck am I doing? I should not be on a dating app. Guys, I had filed for divorce 4 days before I joined Bumble. It was crazy. I had literally gotten back from Atlanta and I was like, well, I've filed for divorce. I'm just going to see what's out there. So obviously, I was thinking, okay, this is the worst idea ever. My therapist would be so mad at me. And she was. She ended up apologizing to me because she was honestly kind of judgy. She was a Christian therapist.
Yeah.
And she ended up apologizing because I think she just realized that was not very nice. But I got off the app and I sent Bran and a couple people who were nice. I felt bad ghosting like a couple people I talked to. I know. Sorry, Brandon. You weren't the Actually, I think it was like only one other person. And I just said, so sorry, I'm getting off this app. This was like such a bad idea. And I told Bran immediately, like when we started talking on Bumble, I told him my situation and that I had filed for divorce and that was what was going on. So I said, "Oh, I'm just not ready to date. Sorry, but here's my Instagram if you want to like stay connected," because I just like didn't want to ghost him. So what were you thinking when I decided to get off the app? Were you thinking that this was done, or did you still have some hope?
I really felt like since you're reaching out and you're making an effort to give me your Instagram, I felt like you obviously wanted to keep talking. So I felt like, okay, then I feel like this is a good sign, like things are going in a positive direction. So let's see how this goes. Let's chat.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I don't even know how you got me to agree. I think what you said is we were talking on Instagram for a bit, and then you said, let's just go to coffee, low pressure. This doesn't have to be a thing, let's just hang out is kind of, but it was a first date. I feel like we both knew it was a first date, but also I remember you telling me that it was very low pressure.
I think because we were just talking so much and things were going so well. And at that point, I'd like to meet with someone, to meet and see what you were like. And like I said, I felt like there was this acknowledgement of, hey, I think it's still early and I got stuff going on, but do you want to talk? So I thought like maybe a yellowish green flag to like try this out, and I asked you out, and yeah, we had a very nice time, very long time for our first
Oh my
date.
gosh. Yeah. So we met at, what was it? It was a specialty coffee place here, a local coffee shop. And yeah, it was so good. We just overshared immediately. So I think one of the reasons the date went so well is that I am, as you guys know, such an oversharer. I love getting vulnerable. I'm not a very surface level, small talk kind of person. And Brandon isn't either. I mean, he really enjoys, like, no, tell me how you really feel. How do you feel about the
Yeah,
universe?
small talk is kind of cringy at times. It can be uncomfortable, just so the weather. What are you doing this weekend?
Yeah. So within
no,
30 minutes, we were talking about religion, what type of churches we went to growing up. And it
the
was
first hour of this podcast was like the first hour of that date, just talking and like, okay, let's get into the nitty gritty. Here's all the trauma and stuff. It was just talking. We're people.
Well,
we have lives, and
let's get into it. Yeah. And it was,
okay.
I mean, as it went on, it got even more so. So basically, we were at this coffee shop for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, and then maybe 2 hours. I'm not sure. But then Brandon said, well, do you want to go for a walk? So I was not dressed for a walk. Okay, at all. But luckily I had shoes in my car and I was like, okay. So we went to some trails here in our city, and we joke now that I would never, which sounds horrible, but I probably would not have wanted to do this if I wasn't trying to
nowadays you
impress
wouldn't
a
want
boy.
to do it.
Because no, I like being outdoors. And I mean, we did get really into running when we got together, and this is where I was so stupid. Do not do as I did. Okay.
Unless there is a knowing when you're on social media.
No, I went off-roading with him on this trail. So we're walking. I just met him. Brandon, yes. So we are walking and he's like, oh, we should go down there. And there's like a creek and it's very much like a wooded area. There's no path. And he said, let's go. And
there was a path. There was like a whole dirt bike path through down to the riverbed. And so it's not like no one had ever been there. People, go there and you can hear people talking 20 feet to your left. And,
it was
it's not that
safe
scary.
For a first date. I would never let our daughter. Brennan, you could have been a murderer. Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah, but we knew each other well enough, right?
Oh, we had talked over Instagram for 5 days. So, yeah, basically that led to us walking for 4 to 5. Like, basically our date was over 7 hours long. So.
Was it really that long?
Yes.
I heard being long, but 7 hours. My goodness.
It was a very long date. So we went off-roading, then we ended up getting lost and we came out this
Yeah.
random way. We were like on the side of the highway. I didn't even know that that part connected to the highway, and we were like near a Starbucks, and I didn't even know how we got there. We had no idea how to get back. The sun's going down. It was a whole thing. Um, but as we were walking, we just got really deep into the lore. I told him about some stuff that I had gone through when I was younger. We talked about exes, like all the stuff that you're not supposed to talk about on your first date. We just got it out of the way. So
Yeah.
I remember we sat kind of like near this ditch, and you talked about your ex, I think, first, and then I ended up opening up and telling him about Ted. And I told him specifically, I remember telling him about how when I was on the cruise with him, I thought that Ted was going to throw me overboard when we were married. And I just broke down crying. And like looking back at that now, I don't think that I had told anybody that I felt that way on the cruise. Because I hadn't talked to my friends really. And I was, as you guys can imagine, actively processing this divorce and this relationship and the domestic violence. And even at that time, I think that I had told my family, well, he has acted out and been abusive maybe 3 or 4 times, is what I told my family. And I didn't realize that the entire dynamic, the verbal abuse, the spiritual abuse, the isolation was all abusive. I was just thinking about the times that I had physically had bruises and where he had actually, you know, horrible assaults. Those are the things that I was considering abuse at the time. So when I was talking with Brandon, I mean, I was just crying about how I really thought Ted was gonna murder me, and he ended up, do you remember this? You like scooted closer to me and you put your arm around me as I cried. And yeah, it was so not romantic and so romantic all at the same time. you know, it was very sweet. And yeah, we just got very deep on our first dates. Yeah, so I feel like that really set the tone for our entire relationship. We were never casual. I would say we were pretty emotionally connected right away. So after that, we went to Whataburger, and because we just wanted to keep these good vibes going, and we got some food. And yeah, from then on out, we were pretty inseparable.
Yeah. I mean, we just, as much time as we could, we spent it together. I mean, what else would you do? I mean, it was a unique time for us. And I don't think there will be people in this world that at least for a very long time, that went through what we did and kind of gave us a kind of a fast forward on a relationship. I feel like we got very close very quickly, very deep very quickly. And I think that kind of helped kind of like propel us to the next stage of relationship. I think it just worked, us as people and the things we were going through. There was a lot of change happening, and
it was 2020, so I think like we had a lot of downtime, as did everybody. So I think that also added to it. But okay, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you remember the first time that I told you about Bethel?
Ooh, first time you mentioned Bethel?
Or the first time that I really got into it? Because I remember exactly where I was, and it was a life-defining moment for me.
So I do remember the time that always comes, like sticks out to me, besides like maybe stuff that you talk about on our first date, was when we were out maybe like another half hour just drive from my parents' house, my mom's house. And it was like a rest stop on the side of the road. And you're like in the middle of nowhere, just fields everywhere. And we just went to relax. And I think, did I put music on or something while we were out there? There was like a cement picnic table there with like a cover over it and like a dumpster with like a trash can bag and stuff. It was just quite a nice place to like kind of get away, because you don't want to spend all your time, right there with my mom in the house and my brother being around. If you want to just hang and chat and talk, we went, and you started telling me about some of your experiences and like what you were grappling with, personally and just like the different ideals you had, trying to figure out what now. You've left this whole, lifestyle and, way of thinking and religion in sense of like how like present it was in your life and on so many different levels. And now you're kind of looking at it a bit more honestly and be like, was I in a cult? This is wild. You were like just peeking through the veil at that point.
Yeah,
And it
guys,
was
because I had
decided to come home.
not thought about it being a cult, or it hadn't felt real. There were things that I knew made me uncomfortable, like the wake up olive situation where Bethel tried to pray the toddler back to life, and it was so traumatizing and it felt horrible for the parents. And the funny thing is, I knew that I hated charismatic Christianity, which was a huge thing with me and Ted, was once we got married, and I can understand, I don't have sympathy for him, but I can understand that we met in this atmosphere, got married in this atmosphere. So for him, it was very jarring that I didn't like it after a while, because I think that I had been so burned by Bethel in my second year, just with my revival group pastor. And then also I feel like I had a really bad internship experience with the Banoffs. And when we were married, he would want to go to a charismatic church. And I remember we went to a couple of them, and I literally felt like I was going to throw up or have a panic attack every time I was in a building where someone was speaking in tongues or they were doing prophecy. It was just extremely triggering to me. And I didn't know why, because if you asked me, do you believe in prophecy? Do you believe in tongues? I was like, yeah, I do. And also I want nothing to do with it. And I didn't really understand why I felt the way that I did. So I think that Brandon met me at a time where, for the very first time in my adult life, I felt that I was allowed to ask any question that I wanted to, because there were times where I would bring things up to Ted and he would be really abusive afterward, or he would tell me that he thought that I was going to hell and that he was worried about my soul. And being at that point, not even a relationship yet, but just in this relationship dynamic with you, where I felt like you really didn't care how I ended up, like I felt as if I could tell you I'm not a Christian, I'm an atheist, or I'm agnostic. I could tell you, hey, I want to be Catholic. Hey, I still really like this sector. I could do whatever I wanted to do and you would accept me no matter what.
Yeah.
And I just
Just
felt
be you.
freedom. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To ask questions. And that was so freeing. So I remember laying on that picnic table. I was literally like laying on top of it and staring at the sky. And as I'm telling him about the fire tunnels and the speaking in tongues, manifesting in the spirit, like, you have to imagine, guys, I felt so cringe. Like, it was very vulnerable for me to even have this conversation with Brandon, because he was raised Catholic. I mean, he had no idea what I was talking about. Like none, So here I am saying all of these things, and he's like, "Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that." And the more that I was talking, I realized how insane everything that I was saying was. And I think that when you're in these circles like Bethel, you're surrounded by so many people who are drinking the Kool-Aid that it feels very normalized. So to be sitting across from somebody who is so normal, so chill, so unmarked by religious trauma, and be telling him what I experienced there, the gold dust, all of that, I remember tearing up, and I said, I think I was in a cult. And it felt true when I said it. I really, for the first time, really felt that way. So I was wondering, what were you thinking at the time? So I'm telling you about manifesting in the spirit. Like, can you take us back to when you first heard what type of Christianity I was a part of?
I think I really struggled to find any sort of like something to relate to in terms of like my experience with church. The closest, I guess, would be the Acts retreat that I went to. Some of like the fun and the group kind of actions and singing and getting on the same level and kind of like bringing it a notch up from just like being in church, being listening, sitting and singing in the pews and whatnot, which was very kind of like respectful and not somber, but that kind of, just this is what we're doing, very polite, type of thing, to your very like raucous, the Lord Jesus Christ, and stuff. I I just took you at your word. I believed you. I mean, because from on the edges of my knowledge, I knew that some other sects out there somewhere, would do things differently. It would be, preaching the Bible and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's just what it was like, especially once you started bringing up the idea. I don't know if you said it that day, but the idea of like it being a cult.
I did say it that day. I remember.
That was the day? Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think I do remember you saying that. It was like, oh, so this was actually something beyond normality. Because at that point, I had been to one mega church. This is before you and I had been to one in town, I think. Because there was one downtown that we went to.
Yeah, well, that wasn't a mega church. Yeah, we can get into that. That was
with like a local,
yes,
like hip church.
Think Hillsong is what this church was giving with the music.
Okay, the one in town that we went to. Yeah, so I had gone to one before. There's like a mega church like on the north side of our town, of our city, and it's like people go there. There's like all these lights and singing. It's like a arena and stuff. It was like I had never been to anything like that. I was used to my small little country church with like just a little second level up in the back a little bit, like where the choir would sing. We weren't there when we performed, but that type of little small humble church. So hearing it was like, wow, this is like a totally other sector. And after that I'd get more insight, and since then you show me like documentaries and stuff. And just not too long ago we were watching the other one about what was it?
This is Shiny Happy People.
Shiny Happy People. Yes, that's what we were watching. Shiny Happy People. He was
shocked when he was like, what is going on right now?
Yeah, it was good for me to get like visuals on it, because I've only ever heard you describe it and me picturing it, and I can picture it in my head, but to actually see people, laughing in the spirit and stuff, and hearing about grave soaking and like the scavenger hunts, it was like, this is another level, my goodness. And the idea of like going to another state and having a town that's like a college town, but like a religious cult town, was like, whoa. It was very interesting and out of my realm of usual knowledge, but I just kept listening and wanted to make sure that you knew I was there for you, and whatever you were processing through, whatever you're hearing, I would give you my honest opinion. And I just about always was like, yeah, that's wild, that doesn't make sense, you shouldn't have been dealing with that, that's wrong, that is extreme, that is disgusting, yeah, honey, you're not crazy. The place where you came from, that was
crazy.
Yes.
And I feel like that was a big part of my healing, was just hearing somebody hear my story, witness my story, and tell me that it was insane. Because it was just so normalized, all of these beliefs, that finally having somebody outside of it, I think just the repetition of you listening to me over and over and over was very healing for me, I think, to kind of rewire my brain.
I really liked your point about like describing what you experienced to someone who wasn't in it, because you really have to like break down what you believe and why you believe it, and having to communicate that with someone that's like, oh yeah, I'm totally in on that, and just like pumped, like, really, tell me more about that. It's like in the cold, in like the stark, white light, it having to describe yourself.
Yeah,
what
like
you believe
explain that. Explain that belief, or like, where does it come from? And I also was realizing how much of Bethel was not biblical. I didn't really even have biblical basis for any of the things, or a lot of them. And then even the ones that did have some biblical basis, it was totally a stretch, and the hyper focus on the signs and wonders was a lot. And I think also just you acknowledging that it didn't seem like a healthy situation. I think it goes back to, that Bible verse where it talks about like knowing them by their fruit. And I mean, it just didn't feel like there was very good fruit. It felt, okay, there's a lot of bad stuff and a lot of harm going on there. Whereas I was looking at you, somebody who I was taught, Catholics, they're so missing out. That's something that Bethel would say is all of these other sectors, specifically, I remember them saying Baptist, but they would say other denominations, we're not saying they're not saved. That yes, there are brothers and sisters in Christ, but they're missing out. And here I was sitting across from somebody who was quote unquote missing out, and you seemed so much happier, so much healthier than I was, So I think that was good for me to see. I also wanted to say, so going back to how we both kind of knew, I remember, I think it was the second time maybe the second or third time we had ever hung out. I came over to the house and we were sitting on your bed and just talking. And at that point, I wasn't in love with you yet because it was like a week or two in. But I remember sitting across on the bed, looking at you and being like, oh, he's my soulmate. Like we're gonna get married. I don't know. I just, no, I did. I felt it. It just, there was like a deep knowing inside of me that, okay, I'm pretty sure this is it. Which is kind of exciting,
That's wild. My goodness.
I know.
So early on, but I mean, look where we are now, it's wild. But I believe you. I remember that. I remember that day. I remember you sitting with your back against the wall, me sitting on the bed right next to you, just talking, just chatting. And yeah, man, those were some special times. I look back on those times so fondly. The world was wild back then, and our time together, it was like almost like the world paused for our relationship. And that's kind of beautiful and unique. And I feel something that we're going to tell our kids and our grandkids about what it was like for everything to just stop and kind of give us some peace to spend some time together, get to know each other. And kind of once things kind of restarted again, the status quo had shifted so much, but it was good. I feel like we kind of really picked up, speed quickly, and it just kept on moving from there. All green flags along the way.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's get into purity culture. Okay, because this was the number one question I asked people. So we're not even in the Q&A section, but I feel like this goes here. How you helped me heal from purity culture. So I remember on our second date, we went to, because I think at this point, we weren't really going out, but we went to a playground and it was nighttime. We're like sitting with the little pebbles and the rocks and stuff. And Brandon asked me how comfortable I was with my sexuality. And Brandon is just, y'all have to know him to understand that question is normal. I mean, he just is like, he's just like a very open person. He's like, let's cut to the chase. So we're like dating and he's like, oh, just wondering like how comfortable you are with your sexuality. And I remember I like almost cried. Like I think I was like not. I know.
I mean, you got to think about it.
Very much not.
By that point, we had spent so much time together and we like talked like every day, right? Something like that. We were like, okay, we're making a point. We're not going to see each other every day. It's early on. We should probably just see each other every few days, but we were constantly calling, constantly texting, constant contact. And so things picked up really quickly. That first date, we went over like through all of the trauma,
all of our lore,
like everything. So at that point, it's all out there. You've totally exposed yourself, at least emotionally. So, cried and everything in front of each other. I mean, it was comfortable, and so by that point, it's like what most people would have like on a third or fourth date. Like at that point, you're comfortable. You've seen each other a good amount. You can start talking about more serious and honest things and human things. And that was just something to ask because you were married and I was just chill. We're adults. 23 and 25 at the time.
But I like
I
didn't
didn't think it was
feel
that
like an
crazy.
adult. I think that's the thing, is that I still, in some ways, um, I didn't feel as if I had autonomy at all over those sorts of decisions. So just him asking, like, yeah, my sex life was not great in my marriage. So he was just asking how comfortable I was. And I just felt even kind of like, like talking about it, and it just brought up all of this purity culture stuff. But I was also super attracted to him. Okay. So there was like this weird dance going on. So the first time, and I've shared this on social media before, and I think it's important to talk about it because, yes, it's extremely personal, but I think that a lot of people can relate who were raised in purity culture to having traumatizing experiences when you have sex, and either it not being what you thought it was going to be, or your partner not being good, or also just the amount of shame. So for me, when we slept together pretty fast, Brandon. So we ended up.
Like I said, fourth date, fifth date.
I know it was pretty fast, and when we did, I literally lost it. I think after a few minutes, I started crying, and I asked that we stop, and you were wonderful, as every human should be. The bar is on the floor. Sorry. I'm not trying to
Please
make
touch,
it seem like that's like amazing, but no, I just started having a panic attack, and I started to say that I was such a whore over and over again, and I was just panicking. And I think in my mind at the time, what I was feeling was that Ted had said something in our marriage. He's just horribly abusive, would call me a whore because he knew that I had all of this shame from my Bethel days and purity culture. And during an argument, he had told me, if we ever got divorced, you would just be a whore and you would sleep around. And I remember I couldn't even be in the moment with you because I was hearing these words of, if we ever got divorced, you would just be a whore. And then I felt like I was living out his words. I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. Look at me. What am I doing? I'm such a whore. He was right about me. And it goes back to this, how he used to say that my pastor had been right about me when she had said some pretty horrible stuff to me. So I had this deep wound that I was a whore. So I was just crying and crying. And Brandon, you were absolutely wonderful and just made me fall in love with you because he just like rubbed my back and told me, you are not a whore, over and over and over again. And we were there for a while, me losing my mind and crying. And he just held me and told me that I wasn't. I'm crying. But I mean, I think that that was so powerful for me because I had these lies in my mind that I thought were so true. Looking back now, it's so funny because I'm such a purity culture hater that I feel so far removed from those beliefs in some ways. But I mean, I really thought that about myself. So to have somebody repeat over and over and be willing to just sit with me in the mess, sit with me and be okay and tell me like whatever you need, I'm here for you. That was everything to me.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like that's just what I needed to do because it was just so sad to see. And I felt like it was so wrong. The things you were led to believe, the things you held so dear. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This isn't Christianity. This isn't God. This is just awful. And it was so unfair. And you were so pure and so kind and so good. No one deserves to feel that way. And I just wanted you to keep hearing that you're not a whore because you're not. And people who have sex before marriage, who gives a fuck?
So real.
Really, I mean, who cares? And I just wanted to be there for you in the best way that I could. I mean, I didn't understand every aspect of what you were going through and what you had experienced growing up, but I just knew that I wanted to make sure you understood that no matter what you were going through, no matter what you were feeling, what you would be going through in the future, that I would be there for you.
And yeah, okay. This is the second time I've cried in this episode. Yeah, well, exactly what Brand just said, where he said, like, who fucking cares? Some people have asked me, how did you even go about unlearning purity culture? And it sounds really simple, and yeah, it may not sound like it would work, but I think just having Brandon, when I say my husband helped me heal from purity culture, I mean it. I mean, he was constantly in the first year of us dating being like, fuck that. And one thing you need to know about Brand is he also doesn't cuss. Like it's so funny. Like I do cuss and he like doesn't really cuss. So like when he cusses, he like means it, he's like, fuck that. Like that's ridiculous. And I think hearing somebody tell me over and over again, like, we don't have to do anything. Like, you never pressured me or anything like that. It was just this thing of whatever you want to do, like, screw anything else. It doesn't matter what people think about you. And I think that was really healing for me, not just with purity culture, but the fact that I was getting divorced. I had all of this shame because, I had people reaching out to me, when people change their profile picture on social media, you start to get DMs. Hey, girly, how you doing? And I'm like, you want tea. You want
Yep.
to know
Yep.
if I'm getting divorced. And you saw that I changed my last name and you want to know all the details. And I wasn't really ready to talk about any of that because I was still processing it. And I was terrified of Ted still. Like, Bran can tell you guys, I was so afraid all the time when we were in public that he was following me or that he was going to come and get us. And I think
I tend to forget like how like present that was that first year. I like thinking back, hearing you describe it now brought back some memories, but it was, it's so understandable. I mean, just a few months before, even like early on, just like a couple months before, you were still married, still living with him. I am so sorry for us, the amount of things that you went through, and I can understand why individuals who have gone through similar experiences being in an abusive relationship, their life immediately after that, can be a bit rough at times because you're having to like shed this weight that you've been carrying for so long. It's not an instant thing. So I really have a lot of respect for what you went through after leaving Ted.
Yeah, I think it was just such a crazy time. And I think having you tell me, going back to kind of your like F it attitude when it came to purity culture, you had that same attitude when it came to what people think about me, which was huge. I think the first year of us dating was really you encouraging me to not care what other people think about me. I would say, well, oh my gosh, those church ladies, they think that I just left him and they think I'm like finicky, and that I just left him for no good reason. And what is everybody going to say when they find out that we're dating? And you just told me, who cares? Like, who cares? Like, who cares if they think that you left your marriage for whatever reason? Like, it's literally none of their business and it doesn't affect anything. And that's one thing about Bran is that that's how you carry yourself in your life. Like, Bran cares 0% what anybody thinks about him. Like he's very, yeah, just live your life, be you, do what you want to do. So
yeah,
I think,
they're multiple time zones away and you don't want anything to do with them anyways. So
yeah, he was like, and
so it doesn't matter.
He was like, and they're a part of the cult. Like, why do we care?
Why are you trying to impress them?
Yeah,
exactly.
Because also, like, are you impressed by them? And I'm not impressed by them. So why do I care what they think about me? And they don't know my situation, and I did. So, Bran was there when I filed my protective order, because I had come back from Atlanta. He helped me. I remember I was on the phone. I was on the phone with the divorce lawyer. I was on, doing all of those things, serving him with the protective order or trying to, and having him help me fill out paperwork. It was honestly, I feel, I'm going to cry. Like that entire first year, I felt like God was so good to me. That's just what I kept thinking the entire time. And I don't share what I believe now, but I do feel God, the universe, whatever, was I felt so rewarded. It felt like everything was working out and that I had been in this horrible situation. And here I go on one date and I meet the absolute love of my life who's like sunshine, and that's how I have always described him as Bran is just sunshine. He's happiness. He's chill. He's unbothered, chronically unbothered, and I think being with somebody like that was very healing in that year. So, um, I did want to share, like in that first year when it came to purity culture, I was very much afraid what people thought. So I think it was for my birthday, June, we ended up going to Corpus. And when we went to Corpus, actually, I think, you know what? I don't think I told my parents about that. Yeah, but I was afraid they were going to figure it out. I was afraid that they were going to know that I went.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's what it was. And I think maybe I lied and I said I went somewhere else. And it's so funny because I remember at the time you were like, Juby, you're turning 26. It doesn't matter. Like that you can go away for a weekend, but I mean,
you were married. You were in another state.
Literally.
Yeah, before you being in school.
I moved out
married.
at 18. I moved out at 18. So it's like, but because of purity culture, the idea of my parents knowing that not only was I like getting divorced, but I was going to now meet this guy, and now I'm going away for a birthday weekend trip. That was.
You have to keep in mind, like, because you said you moved out at 18, right? You were like a teenager, moved out at 18, and you went to Bethel, and then you were there for a while, and then you went over to Pennsylvania, and then you were there for a while, and came back briefly, and then you were married, and you were living, with Ted, and then y'all moved over to Georgia, and then you moved back. You were always out doing something. So you went, the last time you were home, you were a teenager in high school.
Like long term, yeah.
Yeah, so once you finally came back, it was kind of like, what's the status quo here? The last time I was here, I had to listen to my parents and stuff. And so I feel like some of those kind of habits and echoes and social, statuses lingered a bit. And so I think that led to some of that feeling, we should kind of like on the DL to go do our thing, and they don't need to know. It's none of their business type of thing. But it's interesting. I mean, totally, as things changed, we just screw it. We're going to go live our life. We're going to go have fun. We're going to go, and, be, go together and take some time to ourselves, things that, what was it to do?
And I do want to clarify, I love my parents. I think I put a lot of this pressure on myself. So my parents never told me, what are you doing? You're going away for the weekend? I think, sorry, I wanted to clarify that because it makes it sound like I was getting pushback. I wasn't, guys. I just cared what people thought about me. I was scared of what they might think of me doing this. So my parents, they're pretty non-confrontational. So they never said anything to me about this, but later that year, so we started dating in March, and then in December, we ended up going to Atlanta. We went and did a boudoir shoot, which was amazing.
Steamy. It was fun.
So fun.
That trip was amazing.
We need to do another one. It was fun.
Like, I say it all the time. How many times do I like bring up
he loves
the
that trip
to Georgia and then Disney afterwards?
Yeah, we went to Disney and it was everything. But I remember leading up to that trip, like, Bran, how many times was I like, I have to tell my dad, because I was working for my dad at the time. And I was like, I have to tell him that I need time off of work because I'm going to Disney with my boyfriend, and I was so horrified at the idea of my parents knowing that I was sharing an Airbnb with a boy, And Bran had to be like, you were married. You're 26 years old.
Married.
No, but like purity culture teaches you that like it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter what age. It's about this, And I think truly I just didn't. I think one thing that was healing for me was that when I was with Bran sexually, okay, so whenever we had sex in the first year, I never felt guilty, ever. And there was nothing in me that felt shame or bad or like God was mad about it. And when I think about what helped me heal from purity culture, I feel like it was me knowing that we were so right. Like we were so right together. I had felt guilty in the past, but I didn't feel any of that at all. And in fact, I just felt like my life was getting better and better and things were working out for me. I didn't feel punished by God. I felt like I was being so blessed over and over and over again with your love and affection, and also just my family and my parents taking care of me and having my sisters there to help me through that time. That that really helped heal me of the idea that I thought that I was doing something super wrong that was going to send me to hell. Also, in the first year, there was this very sweet situation where Bran spent his birthday with my family, and they had just really hit it off. Him and some other distant family members had really hit it off, and it always just felt like Brandon was a part of the family. It didn't take long for it to feel that way. And as you guys know, Kenzie is my best friend, and I do the overshare hour with her. And this was her first time meeting him. So she didn't meet him until, I think, 6 months into the relationship. She met him on his birthday, and he met my nieces, and they had such a great time at the zoo. And afterwards, we were all just sitting around having drinks, and Kenzie was talking about how, despite the fact that her and my brother are divorced, that she feels so lucky that she got to keep us, our family, and how much she loves us, because Kenzie has been around since she was 14 is when she started dating my brother. And she's just always been a part of our lives. And I remember Kenzie teared up and she was telling Bran, to be loved by this family is such a privilege, and I've loved being loved by this family. And she was kind of just welcoming you in and saying, welcome, I hope you're here forever. And after that, it was his birthday, everybody left, and that was the first time that we had said we were in love with each other. But that was the first time that Bran, he started crying, and he told me that, let's do it. Let's get married. And we obviously waited another, I think, year and a half for him to actually propose. But he said, it's, it may not happen right now, but I feel like this is it. You and I, we're going to be together. We're going to have kids. We're going to, I don't know, be family someday. And that was a pretty big defining moment in our relationship.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I remember that. That was a powerful moment. Looking back, that was definitely a turning point in our relationship, kind of like from phase 1 to phase 2, I'd say. But even saying that, I feel like things didn't change too much after that, because we had been so close for so long at that point. Like, how much closer could you get, other than like moving in? We were just going steady. We had been going steady since like your birthday or something. It just went a long time, and we just a quick start up, and then you've just been going steady ever since.
Well, that is a little bit of our story and all of that, but you guys asked so many questions. I don't even know how many. I feel like there's 30 questions here, probably. So we are going to pause here on part 1 of Brandon's story and our story. But don't worry, part 2 will already be up for you guys to listen to. And we're going to answer a ton of questions, a lot of them about purity culture and some of the other insanity. So you can go ahead and go listen to that now. And if you guys could please leave a positive review for Healedish, it would mean the world to me. So I will see you guys over there for part 2.